Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing. And today, instead of tying a fly, I'd like to talk about the size of the heads we tie on our flies. And I know that being able to tie a very small head on a fly is considered a worthwhile thing to do. Some of the most talented fly tiers out there can put these tiny little heads on these large flies and create this beautiful looking work of art. And I have no problem with it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not criticizing that at all. In fact, I've done a few flies myself that way. However, when I tie for myself, when I tie a fly to fish, the heads of my flies tend to be relatively large. And I do that for three reasons. Well, the first one is an obvious one, is durability. Especially if I'm using a hackle or I'm using a hair wing, those things can pull out on a small head, and I've had that happen to me. Even when I've used a water-based head cement to penetrate it into the materials of the fly to try and hold it together, they still came apart on me over time. I had one particular frustrating situation with, of all things, a conehead woolly bugger. Don't ask me why I was tying a conehead woolly bugger with such a neat finish, but I did. And I tied 6 flies, and they were tremendously effective, and I should tie some more of the things, but they all came apart after 1 or 2 fish. And it was because I really, tried to work with minimal wraps of thread. So durability is an important consideration. But I'm sure that somebody who ties small heads who uses glue couldn't probably get a fly that hangs together. The second consideration is the head acting as a strike trigger. And a bright, especially something like a bright red head or a bright yellow head or something like that, is part of the attractive pattern, the package of the fly. And so if we tie a small red head, we're missing part of the pizzazz of the fly. Predators often aim for the head of the prey. And so when we have a bright, glossy, large head on a fly, it acts as a target, if you will, for the predator, for the fish. Plus, if you get spectral highlights on a bright day, that's part of the package. You think of a glossy black head, insects, their eyes are often large and quite refractive. So a bright black head on a fly can act like the head of an insect. So it becomes part of the strike trigger. The third thing I want to talk about involves hydrodynamics. And yeah, the effect is itsy bitsy, but I want you to think of it this way. We would probably be stunned to know how many times a fish comes up behind our fly, looks at it, and turns away. We know about the ones that hit. We don't know about the ones that just take a look and leave. And I'm sure that if we were sat high up, looked down, we'd be stunned at how many fish turn their noses up at our flies. I look at fishing as a challenge, solving multiple little problems. I don't look for the magical bullet that's going to catch me 1,000 fish. I think of this as an incremental process where I try to improve things in little steps. And one of those little steps is the head on the fly. Now, I want you to think for a moment about water flowing around a rock in the stream. The water next to the rock is flowing quite slowly, actually. The surface bumpiness of the rock actually slows the water down. The layer next to it is moving faster than the current of the river because it has to move around the rock, and in doing so it speeds up. And then the water further out from that is moving at the pace of the river. So you have these two streams going back off the rock that are moving very quickly. Now when we have a large head on a fly, it on a small scale is doing exactly the same thing. In fact, it's three-dimensional. It's all around the head. The water hits the head of the fly and expands around the head of the fly and moves faster. And that causes our materials to be kicked around a little bit more than if the head was small. And I'm saying this is a small effect. But what it does is it creates extra vibration that the lateral line of the fish would pick up. So imagine for a moment that fly is being swung through the current, and it's moving just a little bit more with a little bit more vibration than another fly. Odds are that we might get 1 or 2 more fish hitting that fly. the one that's got more movement and more vibration. It might be only one or two fish a season more. Who knows? No way to tell. But the way I look at it is when I put together my rig, when I present the fly, how I cast, all these decisions that I make are all designed to get these little incremental gains. With the idea of we add all these gains together, it makes a difference over the course of a season. So one of those little incremental gains is those larger heads. And so I'd like you to just give that some thought. The fact that larger head on a fly is likely to produce better results over time than one with a small head. Simply because it's a better strike trigger, it acts to move water better, and the other thing is it stays together better, hangs together better, and we don't have a fly that basically is useless after 2 or 3 fish. So, next time we're putting a head together on a fly, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a small, neat head for appearance sake. Because a lot of us tie for personal satisfaction as well as the fish we catch. We want to produce that work of art. That's what turns us on in fly tying. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have difficulty with producing those little tiny neat heads, don't stress it. You've probably produced a more fishable fly. So give that some thought the next time you put a fly together. Cheers.